Is Orlando all Puerto Ricans? Is Orlando all Disney shit? And is I-4 ever gonna never be under construction? Now we're gonna talk about that and a whole lot more, people. So grab your Mickey ears and get ready to stand in some really long lines. We're gonna unbox the city of Orlando, Florida. Orlando, perhaps one of the most misunderstood big cities in the country. If you've ever been to Orlando, you might remember it as being a very crowded, hot place that's always under construction. That is true. Orlando's grown by more than 30% in the last decade alone, and there's lots more room to keep sprawling outward. At some point soon, Orlando will have more than 300,000 people. Good for you, Orlando. People are moving here from all over the place. It's actually kind of rare to find somebody from Orlando. You'll get used to that if you moved here. You'll be like, where are you from? And they'll be like, where are you from? Many people will say New York. 50 years ago, Orlando was tiny. And 100 years ago, this place wasn't even on the map. Literally. Well, this is Central Florida, so the heat's ungodly in the summer. For 6 months a year, though, it's pleasant. Sorta. The construction part'll never end in Orlando. They're throwing up new communities and new apartments and new buildings everywhere. And Orlando can't build enough entertainment. You'd think the theme park capital of the world would have enough entertainment, but Orlando doesn't think that. Nuh-uh. And you might assume this metro area would have figured out a way to put in some reliable public transportation, but they haven't figured that out yet either. Besides the growth and the heat, Orlando's a pretty decent place to raise a family. There's not a lot of crime here, and it's still pretty affordable. We'll go into just how affordable a little bit later. Orlando's not for everybody, but nowhere's for everybody, right? But in order to really get to know Orlando and see if this place is for you and which part of town you should move to, we need to look at Orlando from a higher level and then drill down into each area one at a time. This is Orlando. See, it's not all theme parks and hospitality workers. Depending on what part of Orlando you're in, it'll be a different experience. In order to make it simple, we're going to break Orlando up into 4 areas: the north, east, south, and west part of the metro area. And we're going to begin over here in West Orlando, because you know you mostly came here to learn about the theme parks, right? Most of the west side of Orlando is going to be a variation of rich neighborhoods, theme parks, and touristy crap. Unless you're rich, you probably won't be living here. Way down here at the junction of 192 and I-4 is what they call Walt Disney World Resort. This is actually made of 4 theme parks: Disney's Hollywood Studios, Disney's Animal Kingdom, Epcot, and the Magic Kingdom. All 4 combined are a huge footprint in Orlando. This area here is actually bigger than the city of San Francisco, and Disney's World Resort is the single biggest site employer in the country. 70,000 people work at these theme parks. And that's not all. West Orlando has a bunch of other smaller theme parks and tourist destinations as well. There's SeaWorld Orlando over here, and then along International Drive heading towards downtown, you're going to find a bunch of smaller entertainment venues too. And don't forget about Universal Studios over here, or the Orange County Convention Center, which is the second largest convention center in the country. Yes, West Orlando is one big tourist trap with more stuff than you can see in a month. Now, would you want to live in this part of town? Probably not, unless you have a lot of money. But there's some people who actually buy a second home over here and then they rent it out. They just want a place to stay when they come visit Mickey. For these die-hard theme parkers, it's cheaper and more convenient to own a house near the theme parks for when they come visit. Yes, there are people who love theme parks so much they own a second home in Orlando. If you live in West Orlando, you're going to have a huge problem battling tourist traffic. Try to get around this part of town after dark and you're going to have a bad time. When all the theme parks close, everyone's going to try to get back to their hotels. Forget about ducking into McDonald's really quick. The lines are really long. The supermarkets are packed. Walmart's packed, especially when the tour buses filled with all the Brazilians or all the British people pull up. But if you did want to live on this side of town, there's some options if you have deep pockets. Now right here is a posh suburb called Dr. Phillips. It's a bunch of big homes and golf courses. You might be surprised to hear the average home price here is only $430,000. It's really nice here, It's really clean. There's a bunch of popular restaurants in the area. But next door is Windermere. This part of town you cannot afford. It's very exclusive. People like Shaq and Tiger Woods and even NSYNC singer Joey Fatone live here. OMG, Joey Fatone, everyone. Big-time Disney execs also live here too. Homes in this snooty part of town are about $650K on average, but most are $1 million or more. The closest you're going to get is simply close to Windermere, a subset of people referred to as Winderneers. Way out this way is a master-planned community called Horizon West. It's far less expensive here. It's a great place to live for all sorts of families. There's single-family homes, townhomes, apartments. There's parks and shopping centers all over the place. 15 years ago, this was all orange groves, but today, it's by far the fastest-growing part of the Orlando metro area. Homes in Horizon West are about $500,000, but they're going up like daily. You might be like, $500,000 isn't that bad, right? Well, it's Orlando. Nobody said it was going to be really expensive, and it won't be this cheap for much longer. Closer to downtown off the turnpike is a smallish community called Metro West. It's another big, large master plan community. It was a super nice golf community back when it was built in the 80s, but it's gone downhill quite a bit now. The homes inside are nice, but crime in the area is kind of bad, and cops are there all the time. You're going to see people using food stamps at the local Walmart. Homes here are about $400,000. And then closer to downtown is a little area they call Millennia. There's a lot of hotels and shopping here. It could be considered a hip place to live. And now we're going to talk about North Orlando. Generally, you could split North Orlando up into two areas. West of I-4 is mostly bad, and east of I-4 is pretty nice, actually. Over here is Pine Hills. It's bad there, pal. They call it Crime Hills. This was a mostly middle-class area, but then in the 90s, this place got really ghetto. You don't want to live in Pine Hills, but if you did, homes here are well under $200,000. And the area just on the other side of West Colonial's also going to be pretty lousy too. West of Pine Hills, it gets a little nicer, but anything in this direction is going to be kind of ghetto and rednecky, generally. However, the other side of I-4 is really nice. Anything way up here by Oviedo is going to be a really nice place to raise a family. Homes here are about $450,000. This is where you might wind up if you don't want too expensive, nor a lot of traffic. The closer you get to downtown, and it gets more modern and hip. This whole area here around Winter Park, closer to downtown, is filled with younger professionals who want to ride their bikes into downtown. There's a lot of restaurants and bars and entertainment in this area, but it's not all younger people. The further you get from downtown, and it's snobby rich people with big stately homes. Now, homes around Winter Park and the general area are going to vary widely. Some are $800,000. Some are townhomes in the 200,000s. But it's really safe here, and there's a lot to do. It's kind of like that in Altamont Springs and Maitland, too. And now we go to East Orlando. Now, East Orlando is a really mixed bag as well, but for the most part, there really aren't any bad areas. It's really sprawly out this way. Just average, safe, pleasant, single-family communities with homes in the 3 and 4 and 500,000s. There's a lot of growth out this way, and it's still relatively affordable. Odds are, if you're a youngish family, you might wind up considering somewhere on the east side of town. Now, one big region on this side of town with a big footprint is the area surrounding the University of Central Florida, or UCF. Now, you might not know too much about UCF since it's not a sports powerhouse yet, although UCF just became a new member of the Big 12, so you're going to know more about UCF soon. You may not know it, but UCF is the biggest college in the nation in terms of number of students. There's a whopping 71,000 students here. That's more than Texas A&M and even Ohio State. And UCF thinks very highly of itself too. You may remember back in 2017, UCF declared themselves college football national champions after going undefeated. UCF even put up a banner in their football stadium and paid all their coaches national championship bonuses. They call their stadium the Bounce House because, well, it bounces when people get all loud. That's because it was cheaply constructed. And UCF's campus is actually modeled after Walt Disney's original plans for Epcot. The campus is made up of rings of buildings. Other nice places to live on the east side are any community with park in the name. Avalon Park, Union Park, Azalea Park, Moss Park, those types of places. So if you're a young family or a college kid, you might wind up in the pleasant eastern Orlando suburbs. But if you're considering this part of town, keep in mind, traffic in Orlando is a bitch. They recently redid a lot of I-4 and they added lanes and made it a toll road. It's certainly not Atlanta or Miami bad, but it's getting worse. And don't forget about bad Orlando drivers. There's a lot of transplants and tourists here, and everybody has their own way of driving. Plus, it's Florida, and drivers here are just crazy or drunk or high or all three. Get this, the CDC once said Orlando has the nation's highest car crash mortality rate. Oh no! And then we come to South Orlando. Now, directly south of downtown is going to be really bad, but it kind of gets better the further south you get from downtown. One area you want to avoid is what locals call OBT. That stands for Orange Blossom Trail. It's this here. Anything along this road is bad news. You're going to find a mix of rednecks, tweakers, druggies, prostitutes, criminals, and other lowlifes here. Now, as you work your way south towards Kissimmee along 441, it's not very stimulating. Just basic strip malls and other low-end retail. It's kind of ugly. The closer you get to Kissimmee, the neighborhoods improve. Hunters Creek is a nice area where you can get a home for about $400K. Also down this way are where you're going to find a lot of Puerto Ricans. 30% of Orlando is now Hispanic, and that number's going up every day. Over here is Lake Nona. It's a new neighborhood that's really quiet and comfortable, and it's meant for upper income people and retirees. There's a bunch of new businesses and other developments that are springing up all over the Lake Nona area. Homes here are going to be a lot, pal, like $600,000 on average. You could call the Lake Nona area trendy and hip, but only if you're trendy and hip. And then way down here is another sort of snobby community called Celebration, where homes are going to be in the $500,000 range, with many in the $1.5 million range. This whole community was designed by former Disney CEO Michael Eisner. It's really pretty, and tourists come here to take pictures. The area that borders Celebration and Kissimmee is really run down. And then we have downtown Orlando. Downtown's up and coming, and there's all sorts of bars and restaurants over here. Over time, it's becoming more and more hip and more expensive and more gentrified. There's a bunch of clubs downtown where you're going to see lots of fake tans and smell cheap cologne. You know the type. Orlando is also very gay-friendly, too. Downtown isn't just clubs and trendy restaurants, though. There's a lot of museums and art galleries and theater venues here, too. There's also a quickly growing job scene in Orlando, especially in tech, healthcare, and aerospace. 2/3 of the Orlando workforce is actually not in tourism and hospitality, if you can believe it or not. There's actually quite a few good jobs in Orlando. West of downtown is less desirable. This side of town's where Orlando stadiums are. They have a Major League Soccer stadium, and the Orlando Magic play here. And way out here is where they play all the big football games in what they call Camping World Stadium. The Paramore neighborhood over here is being gentrified, but it's still pretty run down in many areas. Much of this side of downtown is a lot nicer and newer and more modern and younger. It's pretty expensive over here, and you don't get a lot in terms of size, and there's noisy traffic all over the place. A lot of the people who live downtown are going to be young, and they settle in areas like Colonial Town or the Milk District or the Mills 50 District over here. Anywhere around Lake Eola is also going to be really nice and new and modern too. But again, if you want to live in this part of downtown, you'd better be young and hip and cool and trendy, or you'll be laughed at. JK, no one's going to laugh at you. Or maybe they will. Okay, so that's Orlando for you. As you can see, there is a ton of stuff to do here. It's growing really fast, and it's still pretty affordable for the most part. If you're young, there's places in town you'd love. If you have a family, there's parts of town for you. If you're retired, there's communities waiting for you too, mister. The only part about Orlando you might not like is the traffic and all the damn tourists. But what do you expect? It's the theme park capital of the world. If you don't like it, then don't come. There's always Jacksonville. Bradley, you've lived in Orlando for about 12 years now. Give people an idea just generally, what's it like to live in Orlando?
Well, I would suspect, like many other places, it depends on where you are. You know, like if you live in Dr. Phillips, you're going to have a very different opinion of what it's like to live in Orlando than if you live like in OBT or something. And it depends on how much income you make and stuff like that. I would say overall, I really like living here, but it's not for everybody. Like I know that the one of the other geography channels, Geography King, he ranked Orlando as like his least favorite city in the United States, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. There's a lot of bad cities here, but it's definitely very, very hot here. If the climate, well, you'll either love it or you'll hate it. I know a lot of people move here because they think like, oh, I want to work at Disney World and, everything's going to be great. And then they get here and, it's hot here, July, August, September, and then it just stays hot, October, and then people start missing seasons and stuff like that. So if you can't handle heat and humidity all the time, I mean, it can get pretty cold too, like in January, February, we always get those like 2 weeks where it's like in the 30s, but then it goes right back up to like the 70s and then gets back in the 80s not long after that. But the climate is one thing that people really have an issue with here. There's a couple more things. It's very much, if you live in a touristy area, you're going to have a very different experience than if you live in a more like residential area. And a lot of the people that work at the theme parks and the hotels and the convention center and stuff like that, a lot of people do live in the touristy area. And I can get more into that if you want me to, but that's like a whole other, explanation. But yeah, some areas are growing really fast. Like Horizon West is an area that's growing really fast. Even like east of Orlando, out by UCF, is growing really fast as well. And even south of Orlando, in like Kissimmee, is like exploding as well. So it's just something you have to keep in mind. A lot of places around the country, like Rust Belt or something like that, it's hard for them, I think, to get people to move there. It's hard for them to really fix their economy. Here in Orlando, we have like the opposite problem. We have all the challenges that come with growth, which is funny because I've been living here for 12 years. And yeah, like in 2008, 2009, 2010, it was slow, just because the economy was still trying to recover. But it's almost like for as long as Orlando has been around, like since the 70s, it's been constant growth, except for those like 3 or 4 years. And like right as like 2011, 2012 came, it went right back to exploding. So, in terms of like prices for real estate and stuff like that, especially the last couple of years, it's like completely out of control. Like I bought my house in 2018. I bought it for $280,000. If I were to sell it now, it would be like $380,000 or something crazy like that. I don't think that's a good thing for society that, things are rising that quickly, but it is what it is.
It's good for you.
Thanks, I guess. I mean, I don't plan on moving. I don't plan on selling it, but like those are Orlando problems, I guess you could say. We don't really have the problem of people not wanting to move here. We have to deal with the opposite challenges. So,
yeah. So like, okay, so you mentioned it's not for everybody. It's for some people. Who is Orlando for?
If you like hot weather, we don't have any beaches here, but we're right in the middle of the state. So we have like all the famous beaches like within an hour drive of us. So like Daytona Beach is like an hour east and Cocoa Beach is right down there as well. And then we have Clearwater an hour west. And then Jacksonville is just a couple hours north. So we're not really a beachy place. If you like theme parks, obviously this is the place to be. We've got Disney World and Universal and SeaWorld. Disney and Universal are a lot bigger and more substantial and full of things to do than most people really know or give them credit for. We have all the stereotypical things you would expect from a big city. We've got the bar district and, NBA team, MLS team, and all that kind of stuff. Plus, there's just lots of growth as well. So all like the trendy restaurants and stuff like that. So if you're into things like that, like entertainment, this is a really great place to live. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, without getting into too many details, because I want to break down a few of the neighborhoods and areas that you talked about, but just generally, where are the good and the bad parts of Orlando, if you were going to say northeast, west, south?
Yeah, so you have to be really careful, I guess, when you're picking a neighborhood in Orlando, because some of them, like even if they're right next to each other, some of them can be like really good, and some of them can be not so good. Whenever you look at these like top 10 Orlando places to live, of course, they're always the most expensive ones. So like Windermere or Lake Nona or Horizon West or Dr. Phillips or places like that are going to be the best places to live. If you're looking for something like more affordable, like Davenport, I think, even though that's exploding now too, a lot of like tourism hospitality workers live in Davenport. It's a little more affordable, but over time it's going to go up. I think if there's a lot of young people who choose to live in East Orlando, Winter Park, that area. Some areas are like really, really expensive, but there's other ones that are more affordable that are kind of close to that are building up just because UCF has so many people that go there and, want to stay in Orlando. So that area is getting nicer as well, from what it used to be, but not like the really, really rich part of Winter Park. If you can afford to live there, hey, that's great. But yeah, like over by Rollins College, that part is really expensive as well, but it's nice.
Okay, and where are Orlando's ghettos that people should not go to or move to if they decide to make Orlando their home?
Well, I would say like if you're over by like Orange Blossom Trail, kind of a little bit, I'd say a little bit west of the city, over by Orange Blossom Trail. I'd like to say that there's no like gang activity or prostitution or anything there, but there is. I'd be lying. Also, I'd say like Pine Hills is generally known as a really bad area. There is a lot of crime there. It's probably not as bad as people say it is, but it's got an unfortunate nickname called Crime Hills. But there is some issues with crime over there as well. A lot of people would probably say Paramore as well over by the MLS stadium and the Citrus Bowl. That can, but the gentrification is kind of moving in that direction. So there's a lot of apartment complexes and stuff that are in that area that are actually pretty nice, but the area surrounding it, it can be pretty rough. And Kissimmee used to be, I would say Kissimmee used to be really crappy, but over the past like 6 or 7 years or so, there's been like this great migration from like Puerto Rico to Orlando, and like Kissimmee is like one of the areas where a lot of Puerto Ricans move to. And I was just there like, I don't know, probably 6 months ago or so. I don't like go there very often, but I was in downtown Kissimmee and was looking around. I was like, wow, this is actually like really lively. Like, 10 years ago, this place was a dump. But, I think that it sucks for Puerto Rico, but, a lot of the people that move there from Puerto Rico kind of, livened the place up a bit and made it more economically, viable and a better place to live. So.
Yeah, I saw the same thing in South LA. When I grew up near Los Angeles, like South Central was like where all of the like black ghetto hoods were shooting each other, Compton Watts, it was all over the news, and it was all over, made into movies. And now the Hispanics have taken over that part of town and they actually cleaned the place up. And it's not fancy, but it's certainly a lot better than it was in the 90s. So stuff changes quick in this country, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I have a family of 4 and I'm a typical upper middle class family looking to move to Orlando for a place that's pretty safe where I can get in and out of downtown relatively easy, where would be the most popular place that a younger family would want to move in Orlando?
Like a suburban place, like Horizon West. I might be biased, but Horizon West is really nice. Anywhere around there, really. And also like Oviedo, I guess, would be like a stereotypical, like nice place to raise a family. And, like if you go south of the city, like Davenport's fine too, somewhere around that area. But I would say those are probably the three best areas. Lake Nona, or, I would say probably Lake Nona as well. I haven't really spent much time in Lake Nona. It's very, very new. It's got, just built up. They're getting a lot of, most of Orlando is just kind of like tourism jobs, and there's, medical jobs and stuff like that. Whereas Lake Nona has more focus on professional jobs. So if you're upper middle class, that's where a lot of people live there. Also, Celebration is another one that people might want to look at. I know that's like it's a little more expensive, and it's a little more like stereotypical, like, oh, you live in Celebration, but it is nice,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned jobs. I hear Orlando is becoming more of a tech hub with defense and technology, and kind of like upper type jobs that are not necessarily just tourist related. Is that true? Are you seeing like a job growth in Orlando for the last few years?
Yes, it definitely. Our politicians here are obviously well aware of the fact that we're super dependent on tourism. And I think it was really September 11th was the thing that made a lot of our local leaders realize, like, okay, we need to diversify our economy because, without tourists, we have no resources. So over the past 20 years or so, they've really been making a lot of investments, particularly into UCF, in trying to diversify the economy for things that aren't tourism. And they've actually done a pretty good job. Like, we do have a lot of tech closer to East Orlando, but there's some stuff in Winter Garden as well, and in downtown Orlando. I'm not really like a tech person, so I can't, I can't really speak on that as much as I could, like the tourism side. But I know that we've been getting it's not like Houston or Austin or anything. It's not nearly on that level. But UCF does have a lot of tech programs. They've been able to retain a lot of people here in Orlando. We do have a lot of good paying jobs here. The problem, I guess, in terms of getting the average wage up for the statistics, the problem is just that our tourist attractions are so successful that for every job we add that's like $100,000 a year, we add like 10 jobs that are like 25, 30 grand a year. So that average wage has never really gone up. And I don't know if it ever will, but we definitely have a lot more of the tech jobs now. We also have Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and, jobs like that have been here for a while, that are basically defense contractors that have been here for a long time. And they actually hire a lot of people from UCF. They hire a lot of management from Disney and Universal as well, because, obviously they pay more. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do hear a lot of people complain about the traffic on I-4, and it's getting worse because of all the growth. So I guess that's something else to consider. Everywhere is getting bad in a big city when it comes to growth and traffic and gridlock. But I hear, Orlando isn't as bad as other major metro areas. It's traffic's getting worse, but it's not like unbearable, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. Traffic in Orlando is very unpredictable. I guess that's how I would describe it. You never know. It depends on vacation times. If there's a lot of tourists here, it depends on if there's like big conferences. It depends on, if there's like big tour groups or whatever, lucky for me, I did the whole Orlando traffic thing for years and years and years while I was going to UCF and living in other areas of the city. And fortunately for me, I live pretty close to work now, so I don't have to deal with I-4 or 429 or anything like that. But we recently, like over the past 5-6 years, we did a big thing on I-4. So it was basically completely redone. It looks totally new, and they added toll lanes in order to pay for it. So it's kind of like Atlanta or Miami, where you can either pick, like, if you want to go on the free lane, which is going to have traffic, or you can pick, if you want to go on the toll lane, which is going to not have traffic and cost money. So we've just kind of been I guess, taking ideas from other cities. But yeah, it's just very unpredictable, and it can get really bad, like especially around International Drive where I-4 meets International Drive.
Yeah, stay away from there, especially when the theme parks get out. You don't want to be driving around there at 10 o'clock because good luck getting a hamburger or running into Walmart, right?
Right. Yeah, that is the most frustrating thing. If you work like in Orlando in the tourism business, that is literally the most frustrating thing about your life, is that sometimes you just want to like get off of work and be like, God, I really want like a McFlurry. And when these theme parks close, and it's not even just like next to Disney World, because Disney World, Universal, SeaWorld, International Drive, it's not like they're right next to each other. I mean, there's some distance between them, but literally like all over the touristy areas of Orlando, all these fast food places just get slammed at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then they stay busy because, once the tourists get their food, then people get off of work, and then all the people that work there go there. So yeah, like sometimes, like I picked my brother up at the airport once, and he was like, man, can we just go to Wendy's or something? And I was like, oh man, it's 11:30 at night. Like, I don't want to go to Wendy's. It's gonna be slammed. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, it's 11:30 at night. It's not going to be slammed. I was like, just believe me. And then of course we went there and it was slammed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You get like a tour bus of Brazilians, and good luck getting your food for like another hour, right?
It's like that episode of SpongeBob where they're at the Krusty Krab, and he's like, "Oh, the anchovies, the anchovies are coming," and then like all the anchovies get off the bus and pile into the Krusty Krab. Yeah, it can definitely be like that sometimes, particularly like Cece's Pizza on International Drive. On International Drive or over on Palm Parkway, you get those big groups.
How's Orlando changed since you've been there? What are some things that the city's kind of implementing, or how has the city kind of changed in the last 10 years?
It's changed a lot, but it's really been more of the same. It's just like straight up growth. Just houses being built everywhere, new attractions being built everywhere. New hotels being built everywhere. So we've always been a place where, people from the north want to move to, because, Disney has millions of fans from all over the world. And a lot of people, think it's like, oh, I'm going to retire and I'm going to go drive a bus at Disney World or something like that. But it seems to have accelerated in the past few years. I don't know. And it's a mix of a bunch of things. So I would say like it's definitely still growing. And it's been growing for like 30 years straight. So some of the things like the rising home prices, things like that, have spiraled out of control, definitely, even with all the construction. And it's hard to come up with a real solution to that, because basically our solution in Orlando has been to add more, to handle more demand, which is the right solution. I mean, you have to do that if you want to manage it, but it almost becomes like a problem of like induced demand, because the more housing and the more attractions and the more everything and the cheap airfare and all that, the more you add, like if it keeps the price down, the more people are going to come. So, like we've definitely seen, like even with tourism, like with airlines, like if people can get here cheaply, it used to be, you had 5 legacy carriers or whatever, but now you have Spirit and Frontier and Allegiant and all these other ones. So, they're coming here too. And it's just like, it's a problem of induced demand, just more and more people. Like sometimes you'll be at like a theme park and you'll be looking around, you're like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in the center of the world. There's so many people here, from all over the world. So I would say it's changed a lot, but it's been more of the same, just rated.
Is that like something that, every city's got issues and things to consider in the near future? Is that Orlando's thing, is just trying to manage growth in a sustainable way without alienating the people that live there and making it just a complete madhouse?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is. We our development has been very much like stereotypical post-war, like we have single family housing everywhere. We don't really have good public transportation. We've just got like big apartment complexes just kind of scattered all over the place. Um, so in terms of economic development, the common sense thing to do in order to help people, it would be like, make sure that you have good public transportation, because most people that work here work in tourism, which is not like the highest paying industry, as everyone knows. But there really hasn't been a whole lot of political will over the past 30 years to really like build up the infrastructure of public transportation, because people don't want to raise their taxes and all that kind of stuff. So it's a hard problem to solve, because when you have all these tourist attractions and you have, tens of thousands of people that work at these places, like our number one job here in Orlando that people work is actually food service. So if you're working a food service job, having a car and having maintenance and gas and insurance and all that kind of stuff, like if you're working 40 hours a week during food service, it can be really expensive. But that's how everything is here in Orlando. I would take a guess and say we probably are the biggest, like most popular city in the country that does not have a dedicated like funding source for its public transportation. They just kind of like, they scrap their money together from somewhere, from some legislator somewhere from the city or something. I don't know. But and the current governor of Orange County, that was like one of the reasons that he won, was because he said, yeah, we need to find a way to get a dedicated funding source so we can, move people around better. And he won on it, but then the pandemic happened right after, so everyone kind of forgot about it. But I would say that's the one thing we really need to work on, is improving our transportation and getting housing, accessible to that transportation. Because what's going to happen here is the same thing that happened in California, the same thing that happened in Miami. It's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow. And it's just going to keep getting more and more expensive, and no one's going to find a good solution for it. So
it's kind of ironic because you got Epcot there, and it's like the future of transportation, and you've got all these like, a lot of the theme parks are built on transportation and innovative ways to get people around, and then you have a city that hosts all that can't get its people all around.
Yeah, that is, I never thought about that, but that's a good piece of irony there. Yeah, Walt Disney, he was definitely a visionary, and he thought about things like that. But sadly, he wasn't around to see it all develop after that.
So I guess it's like, the question is, the theme park entertainment thing. A lot of people move to Orlando just to work at theme parks or just to go there. I mean, like, do you know people from like that have moved from the Northeast that are like, I love Disney World so much that I just want to live in Orlando? That's a thing?
It is. Yeah, believe it or not, it's a thing. We do have that element of being one of those places where people move to as like a destination, not on the scale of LA, obviously, but like a lot of people move to Orlando with big dreams, and then, some of them make it and some of them end up having to leave.
What are the big dreams? Like, I'm gonna go to Disney World every day.
Being a performer, and because obviously, these theme parks, they have a lot of shows. It's hard when you work in the entertainment industry. It's hard to get a full-time job because like things are transient, so like these characters and the like people that work in these shows and stuff like that. A place like Universal Studios or Disney World, you can actually do that full time, like, all year round, because those shows go every year. So it's even for people who work in theme parks, if you want to have a career in the theme park industry, it's hard to get a full-time job because all the places in the north are closed half the year. So, if you just want to work in the theme park industry, then, Orlando is really the place to be.
Don't theme parks get old? Like, I mean, so like, let's say I love Disney World and all the other things that go with theme parks. And I moved down there because I love it so much. I mean, wouldn't you get bored of going to these places over and over again? Or I don't get it.
Yeah. Once you live here for like 5 years or so, you kind of get over it. I think most people do. But there's enough in Orlando here to do. I think, we've got Wekiva Springs, and all sorts of like naturey things around. We've got plenty of malls. We've got all the things you would expect from a big city, lots of restaurants and stuff like that. We have that here too. So you're not going to be going to like, I mean, some people do, but I mean, the vast majority of people are not going to be going to Disney World or Universal Studios like every day.
Is it like a year-round thing too? Like, is there summer? Is there a peak? And then there's like the rest of the year when it's not as busy down there, or is it even busier in winter when it's not so hot? Like, is there like a season?
Yeah, well, before the pandemic, I would say the theme parks were just busy all the time, especially for like, it didn't used to always be that way, but from like 2011, 2012 to like 2019, the theme park businesses, they figured out how to make themselves busy all the time with events. They've got like conferences, cheerleading competitions. They do a lot of marketing overseas. So from like the UK and Brazil, they'll be like, hey, because in I don't know, not so much Brazil, but like in Europe, they're forced, I guess by their government to take a month-long vacation every year. So like we have, in Orlando, we have big amounts of people who like to come here from Europe and from South America. So the theme parks could always find people to fill up the parks. Not so much Busch Gardens because that's off to the side in Tampa, but Disney and Universal definitely. But after the pandemic, it's become much more based off the school calendar. So like we were really busy, during the summer, like it was slammed. And then right when school started, it was just, it was empty. I'm personally not a big fan. I spent a lot of time in theme parks when, I first moved down here, but I don't like going like April through September. I'm good. I'll gladly go in November, December, January, February, but I'm just getting too old to be, in 95-degree, 100% humidity for more than an hour at a time.
No, I get you. Standing in lines with irritating people, waiting for things. Yeah, no. So like if I were to go to Disney World like today, it would be half packed from the summer. Is that what you're saying? When normally it would not?
It would be pretty slow. Yeah.
Is that weird to see these theme parks half empty?
Yeah. I think that everything that Orlando had going for it, I think is going to come back at some point in terms of tourism, with all the tour groups and with the conferences and with the cheerleading groups and all these like big groups that would come down here and really fill up the tourist attractions before the pandemic that don't really come now. I think that'll come back, but it's the theme parks, they're still, I think that they're doing okay, but it's definitely not, it's not 2019 yet. It's not there.
No. Well, if you're thinking about moving to Orlando, there's a lot of things that you need to consider. And it sounds to me like this is the time to get down there before the home prices are too high. And while the theme parks are still half empty, you can move down to Orlando and get yourself a house that's not outrageous. And you can probably have no lines, right? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. But as of now, if you come during the school time, then yeah, it probably won't be too bad.
Well, thank you very much for your help. Really, that was really insightful. I think that it'll be helpful for a lot of people. I mean, Florida is definitely clearly one of the top 5 places people are moving. Orlando's grown 30% in the last 10 years. It's almost got 300,000 people. And it looks to me like there's a lot of room to continue to grow there, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, we're right in the middle of the state, and we're a very flat state. So who knows? Who knows what the boundaries are in terms of how far it's going to grow? It's kind of like Dallas, where it's just right in the middle, and it just keeps going out and out. So I would expect that trend to continue. I don't really know what the point of diminishing returns is. People's tastes change over time. They could just be like, oh, it's too hot there. You get hurricanes. And then all of a sudden people could just decide, we don't like it there anymore. I don't know. But the trend for the last 30 years has been just more and more growth. So I would just expect to see more of that.
Mm-hmm. Hey guys, if you learned something new about America or what it's like to live in America, great. You should think about subscribing and turning on your notifications. You can also click one of these videos or playlists for more. You can also now buy my songs on iTunes and other formats. Click the link in the description. Thanks for watching. And remember, while we all might have different views, we should all be nice to each other and try to make the US a better place in a positive way.
This is Sage, Nick's manager. This has been a Corner House Entertainment production.
And are you looking to move and need advice? I do consulting. That's right. I'll sit down and talk about where the next perfect place for you and your family should be. I do it all the time. Together, let's find you a new home that's safe and checks all your boxes. You can get my email in the description to find out how I can help you find your perfect relocation.